Hello, welcome to the Craft House Magic Set of Tutorials. My name's Ellie and today I'm going to chat with you about how I choose my yarn for a particular project. So there are 3 characteristics that I think are really important to make sure that you've got right. So first of all is yarn weight. So you need the right thickness of yarn for that particular project. Normally a pattern will tell you exactly what thickness of yarn you need. It can also be determined by measuring how many wraps per inch you have when you wrap your yarn around a ruler. Now if you've got a certain number, that you can then check a table that they have on Ravelry. I'll pop a link down below and you can check what weight your yarn is even if it hasn't got a label on it. So make sure you select the right weight of yarn or the right thickness of yarn for that particular project. Number 2, you've got to choose a yarn that's got either plied or not plied according to what project you're making. So if you've got a single yarn that has just one single strand of yarn that's twisted, that means that the yarn is slightly less durable, so you want to avoid using that for projects like socks where you're going to get a lot of wear. That yarn will probably wear quite badly, you'll get pilling, it'll wear away and you'll end up with holes in your socks. So there are some advantages of having a single ply yarn. It takes dye up really well. It is quite a squishy material, so it is very soft and ideal for things like shawls. So yarn that has multiple plies, or 2, 3, 4, 5 or even 6 plies, gets stronger. So if your yarn is highly twisted, so sometimes yarn is labelled as high twist, then that's more durable as well. But actually yarn that has sort of multiple plies, like 6 plies for instance, you'll find that that is actually a very balanced yarn, so you end up with it being very effective for the use in things like cables. So that's plies and the yarn weight. So the third thing is the material which the actual yarn is made of itself. So certain fibres have different properties. So things like merino wool or blue-faced Leicester wool are quite a lofty yarn, and you'll end up with a lovely puffy project, a bit like my shawl, nice and lofty and squishy if you use the right needle size, of course. But things like silk, they're very much a drapey material, so you want to choose silks and things for things like shawls. So now I want to talk about each sort of project and the properties I look for a particular project yarn. So if I'm going to knit a sock, I want a yarn that's got at least 2 plies, because having plies makes that yarn stronger. I want it to be out of a material that is relatively durable, ideally things like BFL really, because it's a more durable fibre in terms of the wool. Because if you compare merino to BFL for instance, BFL is a longer fibre, so it's slightly more durable, even though it's still quite soft. So things like cashmere for instance, I definitely avoid having cashmere when you're knitting things like socks or garments that are gonna have a lot of wear, because it does pill like crazy because of the short fibres. So I sell a merino cashmere nylon blend, and even though it's got the nylon to give it a bit more strength, the cashmere does pill quite a lot. And lastly, if you're making things like socks that need a more durable material, it's ideal to have nylon in there. So I prefer to knit a pair of socks with nylon in it. So that's what yarn I'd look for socks. So with shawls, you could go for single plies and plied yarn. It wouldn't really matter, because the durability, you don't normally need to account for durability in a shawl, because it doesn't undergo so much rigorous movement or friction or anything, so you can pretty much choose whatever you fancy. But I'd go for something like merino, because it's a little bit softer than BFL. BFL is okay, it depends on how soft you like things really. So I prefer things for shawls to be made out of merino really, but some people like BFL, that's fine. You can use softer fibres, like the MCN would be ideal for a shawl because it doesn't get as much wear and tear, but things like silk, they're very much a drapey material, so you want to choose silks and things for things like shawls. And I also sell a Camelon silk base in my shop, which is a very drapey yarn as well, so things like that would be ideal for shawls. Because you don't have a lot of wear, again, you can use either singles, 2-ply, 3-ply yarns. That's absolutely fine. Lastly, for sort of things like garments and blankets, it depends on how much you're going to wear it, really. So if you want something that's quite durable, again, I'd go for a longer fibre, say like BFL, and add some nylon in there if it really wants to be durable. But if you're wanting to go for really soft, you can just have like 100% merino. Again, it depends how much you're going to use your blanket, so if you want it to be stronger and tougher, add the nylon and use fibres that are longer. If not, you can use singles and all sorts. It's really up to you, really, what you go for when you're looking for a project. And I'd also like to mention that yarn weight doesn't actually coincide with the number of plies. So I often call a fingering weight or 4-ply yarn the same weight. A fingering weight really is a better term, because 4-ply doesn't mean it's got 4 plies. It's referring to the weight quite often. So it's important to, when you're reading the label, does the 4-ply refer to the number of plies of the actual yarn or the weight of the yarn? So it can be a little bit confusing. So it's probably better to call it fingering weight, really. Another important thing to consider when choosing your yarn is making sure that you've got the correct needle size, really. So having a very small needle for that size yarn can make quite a dense fabric, which is more suited to things like socks and things that need to be more durable, whereas if you knitted the same yarn with a larger needle size, you'd have a more open, squashy texture. So choosing the right needle size is important as well. So I hope that's been helpful to you in choosing your yarn for a particular project. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye!